Hello everybody, it's Walter, your favorite historian, educator, professor, and social studies extraordinaire. Thanks for tuning in today. Today's date is September 27, 2025. This video is entitled, "The United States Was Not Founded to Be a Democracy." Now, before you start biting my head off, I just want you to understand right quick that while the United States of America has indeed evolved into a democracy in the present world, when this country was founded, and for a significant portion of its history, largely up until after the American Civil War, this country was not intended to be a democracy. And now, before you start throwing tomatoes, allow me to explain. So in another video, I talk about state constitutions and the incredibly high bar that is placed on participation in political life in most of the early state constitutions, all right? There are property ownership requirements to vote, to hold office, okay? And these bars make it incredibly difficult for the average citizen to participate in political life. This is seen throughout most of the original state constitutions for the original 13 states. The idea of democracy, pure democracy, in which the vast majority of citizens got to participate in political life was seen as unthinkable and absurd by most of our founding fathers, okay, and most of the other elite of the day, considering that these individuals, like I said in another video, had no stake in society in their opinion. They had no property, they had no freehold. They had very little but the clothes on their backs and maybe a ramshackle living situation, all right? And, they were not financially endowed. And the most virtuous citizens were seen as those who had real property and personal property, the wealthy elites. And these wealthy elites wanted to keep all power concentrated in their hands. Simply put, enfranchising millions of the common people to be able to vote and hold office would threaten that control, okay? The pure democracy, ladies and gentlemen, is a system based on majoritarianism. In America, both then and now, the elites are the minority, not the majority. And the elites back then knew that by allowing a pure democracy, their elitism and ability to govern in that way would be challenged, okay? Would be challenged substantially, all right? Might even be eradicated altogether, depending on the radical nature of the majority. So the framers absolutely created an America that reflected elite control. They wanted to check democracy wherever possible, and that is exactly what they did. Democracy was checked both at the federal level and the state level. All right. That's why a lot of people have argued that the American Revolution didn't really change very much for the vast majority of people here. We just replaced one set of elites, the British, and of course got rid of a king, for another set of elites, American elites, okay? So it didn't really change that much for the average person, okay? So, we're not seeing a huge shift in society based on who's controlling things. Women, African Americans, Native Americans really do not see much change in their average everyday way of life. And that's just how it was, okay? We're not changing the social structure of this new country merely because we don't have a king anymore. So please understand that. So to further emphasize my point, these groups are kept down. These groups represent millions of people. And like I said, coinciding with the white male butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers, the regular people, both then and now, constitute the majority of society, and the elites were not about to let all these people, women, black people, Native Americans, and common white male laborers threaten their control, okay? So high bars were placed on voting and holding office to make sure the elites retain power. Let's look at the federal constitution as originally designed, okay? The president is chosen indirectly by an electoral college, all right? A check on the democratic tendencies of the people. The United States Senate was originally chosen by the state legislatures until 1913 with the 17th Amendment to the Constitution. So before 1913, the state legislatures chose the U.S. Senate, not the voters like they do today. That was another check on democracy, okay? The House of Representatives was the only real democratic branch, institution rather, of the federal government. The House of Representatives, which of course proportionately represents the states in Congress, has always been chosen directly by the voters. That's the only institution that was organically in the hands of the people, all right? The people, that's why it's called the People's House. And that structure right there with the House of Representatives has not changed since it came into existence with the Constitution in 1788. The Supreme Court, all right, its members were appointed by the president, were and are appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate, and they serve for life, okay? That, ladies and gentlemen, is a complete rejection of anything democratic, okay? There's nothing democratic about that. I understand why the framers gave us a life tenure judiciary, absolutely to ensure judicial independence and ensure that judges would not be tools in the hands of politicians. Quote the irony from today's Supreme Court. But we're not going to get into that, all right? And so you see that what I just described and how the original Constitution certainly still has many of its original effects. The president is still chosen by an electoral college. The Senate, of course, is now elected directly by the voters. But again, it took until 1913 with the 17th Amendment to get that far. And the House, of course, is chosen by the voters. Supreme Court appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate, and its members serve for life. So it's anything but democratic. So the United States Constitution, it's as originally designed. Each of its branches of government, executive, legislative, and judicial, all answered and got their seats by way of different constituencies, and thus answered to different groups. The only democratic institution was the House of Representatives, chosen by the voters. And of course, the states themselves set the qualifications on who could participate in those elections to put people in the House of Representatives. Okay? So you saw those very same restrictive institutions at the state level. All right? All of the state constitutions, you see executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government. Executives are almost always chosen by the state legislature. They are not chosen by the individual people of the state. The legislative branch is chosen by the people of the state in some form, but you can expect, is in almost all of the early state constitutions, you can expect to see high property ownership requirements to vote, sometimes requiring an individual to hold thousands and thousands of dollars in today's money worth of personal property and real property. All right. Individuals typically had to have a certain amount of property to hold office as well. So all of this, and of course, it goes without saying that the judicial branch is almost certainly appointed by the executive, confirmed by the state Senate, and its members will likely serve for life or for a very long time. So all of this design, ladies and gentlemen, proves to show that the United States, as originally founded, was designed to be a country that kept all power concentrated in the hands of the elite, okay? It is not intended to be a country that embraced broad democracy where the vast majority of the population could participate in public life, okay? We had to have a civil war, civil rights movements, multiple amendments added to the Constitution, 13th, 14th, 15th, and 19th, before the promise of freedom and equality and true democracy became a reality. And it is only because of those things and today that America is a real democracy. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave them in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer them as we have civil discussion. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Blue Collar Scholar, Professor Shelton.